The morning after my uncle's funeral, I stood in the gravel driveway of our family's 150-year-old homestead in Willow Creek, Montana, clutching a worn deed in my hands. The paper was soft, almost fragile, but the ink bold and unyielding spoke of a time when promises were carved into the land itself. The funeral had been a quiet affair, just like Uncle Henry, a man who let his actions do the talking. Now, I was back at the ranch, a sprawling 200 acres of rolling hills and weathered timber that had been in the Dawson family since 1869, before Montana even joined the Union. The old barn, its beams still square against the endless prairie wind, stood as a monument to resilience. I ran my fingers along the split-log fence, smoothed by decades of storms and the hands of my ancestors. Out in the pasture, a handful of cattle grazed, their shadows long in the late August light of 2024. The air carried the scent of dry grass, pine, and the faint tang of oil from the workshop. Inside the shed, Uncle Henry's tools hung in perfect order, clean, sharp, ready. A hammer from my great-great-grandfather's time. A set of wrenches that still turned true because Henry didn't believe in cheap junk. This place wasn't just land. It was a living testament to grit and quiet pride. I was soaking in that rare moment of peace when a sharp, furious pounding shattered it. The knocks weren't polite, they were a demand, like someone trying to punch through the front door. I stepped out of the shed, boots crunching on gravel, a knot tightening in my gut. Nobody knocked like that out here. Before I could reach the porch, the door swung open, and a stranger stood in Uncle Henry's living room, uninvited. She was in her late 50s, dressed in a stiff blazer that screamed city, her hair sprayed into a rigid dome. She gripped a clipboard like a weapon, her face a mask of smug authority. "Are you the new owner?" she snapped, voice sharp enough to slice through the calm. I froze on the threshold, stunned by her nerve. "I'm Luke Dawson," I said, keeping my tone even. This was my uncle's place. She didn't offer condolences or a name. Instead, she marched forward, heels clacking on the oak floors, and shoved a paper at me. "Final demand." It read in screaming red letters. "You're in violation of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association bylaws," she declared, tapping the paper with a manicured nail. "Unpaid fees, fines, and penalties totaling $800,000. I stared at her, then the paper. It felt like a cruel prank. "Ma'am, there's no HOA here. This ranch predates your subdivision by over a century." Her lips twisted into a smile that said she knew something I didn't. "Oh, there is," she shot back. "Your uncle ignored his obligations for years. We've been patient." She pointed out the window, her finger trembling with indignation. "Unregulated livestock, non-compliant fencing, an unpermitted barn. It adds up. Pay the $800,000, or we'll foreclose." My mind reeled. I'd spent 25 years as a paramedic, trained to stay calm in chaos. But this was different. This was an invasion. The seal on her notice looked off-cheap, like something from a craft store. "This land's been ours since 1869, I said, voice steady but firm. "You have no jurisdiction. You need to leave." She laughed, a short, ugly sound. "I'm Cynthia Hargrove, president of the Pine Valley HOA. You don't decide jurisdiction. You have 1 week to pay, or we'll take this place. And if you make trouble, I'll have the sheriff here by sundown." She stormed out, the screen door slamming behind her. The silence that followed felt poisoned. I stood there, the fake notice crumpled in my hand, the peace of the ranch gone. Cynthia wasn't mistaken, she was a predator, and she'd just declared war. I smoothed the paper on the kitchen table, studying it under the light. The seal was a joke, a blurry eagle with no county name. My paramedic instincts kicked in. This was a spark that could burn everything down if I didn't act fast. I went to Uncle Henry's old desk. It was scented with years of ink and pipe smoke. He'd always said, "Paper beats talk." His records were meticulous stacks, receipts, cattle logs, even a leather-bound ledger labeled Dawson Ranch Records. Inside, I found a certified 1869 survey map, its elegant script marking our 200 acres with landmarks still standing. The cottonwood by the creek, the boulder on the eastern ridge. Tucked behind it was a 1987 county ordinance with a sticky note in Henry's handwriting. Section 3, Paragraph C, Legacy Properties pre-1950 exempt from HOA covenants. He'd known they'd come for him. He'd been ready. The next day, I drove to see Amos Carter, a grizzled rancher we called iron for his stubborn streak. His place, another old spread, sat 3 miles off. I found him in his barn, tinkering with a tractor older than me. I laid the ordnance on his workbench. HOA trouble, he grunted, wiping grease from his hands. I told him everything, Cynthia, the $800,000, the threats. He nodded, unsurprised. She tried to find me for a non-compliant fence 2 years back. Her subdivision's a mile away. He tapped the ordnance. This is ironclad. Legacy ranches are untouchable. But Cynthia doesn't care about loss, she cares about winning. His warning stuck with me. 2 days later, I was checking the southern fence when a black SUV rolled up, followed by a sedan. Cynthia stepped out, flanked by 2 HOA board members, a jittery woman with a notepad and a hulking guy with a measuring tape slung over his shoulder. This wasn't a visit, it was a siege. I strode toward them, keeping my voice low. You're trespassing. Cynthia waved a paper labeled Warrant of Inspection. We're here to check for violations, she said, loud enough for an imaginary audience. The big guy, Vince, started unrolling his tape. I stepped closer. That's not a warrant. It's a printout. A real warrant needs a judge's signature and a deputy. Get off my land. The woman, Ellen, hesitated, but Cynthia's face hardened. We're conducting official business. You're interfering. It hit Methy, we're building a fake paper trail, measuring my land to justify a lien. This was a calculated heist. Get out, I said, my voice a quiet blade. They stood there, locked in a silent standoff, before Cynthia spat, this isn't over, and they sped off, dust clouding the air. The ranch felt colder after that. I bought a voice recorder, kept it in my pocket, always on. My phone became a weapon, snapping time-stamped photos of every SUV that cruised by, every letter left on my porch. I started a logbook, just like at the fire station. August 10th, 2024, 9:47 a.m., black SUV, plate ABC, 456, parked 5 minutes, driver C. Hargrove. I compared Cynthia's notice to a real county tax bill. The county seal was crisp, with Montana's bighorn sheep and motto. Hers was a generic stamp, a felony forgery. I had her, but she wasn't done. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up days later. 2 deputies, cautious but professional, stepped out. We got a trespassing call from Cynthia Hargrove, the older one said. I invited them in, laid out the deed, Henry's will, my ID, and the forged notice. She's using a fake seal to extort me, I said. The younger deputy studied the papers, then looked at his partner. The air shifted. It appears Miss Hargrove misrepresented the situation, the older one said. Sorry for your loss, Mr. Dawson. They left, and I felt a flicker of victory. But I knew Cynthia doubled down. That Friday night, my dog's low growl woke me. Headlights sliced across the pasture, then vanished. I grabbed a flashlight and found a 4x4 red sign nailed to the barn. Violation, property seized by Pine Valley HOA. The nails were driven deep, scarring the old wood. I pried it off, photographing every angle. This was vandalism, a declaration of war. I called my old friend, Sam Rivera, a retired county surveyor who knew every rule in the book. He arrived with a briefcase and a notebook, studying my evidence in silence. Luke, he said finally, her claims are impossible. Your ranch predates the HOA by a century. It's legally untouchable. He tapped her bylaws. She's betting on intimidation, not law. Then he showed me an email from an HOA insider, sent weeks earlier. He's grieving, alone. Push him with fines, and he'll sell cheap. The land's worth millions to developers. It was a conspiracy in black and white. I called a meeting with neighbors Iron, the Miller family, and even a couple from Pine Valley fed up with Cynthia. In Iron's barn, I laid out the proof. When I read her email aloud, Iron slammed the table. That snake. The others erupted, sharing their own stories of her petty fines. They pledged statements, ready to fight. But the next morning, at the bank, the teller's face fell. Your account's frozen, Mr. Dawson. There's a lien from the HOA. My heart sank. The manager showed me the filing, another forgery, backdated to look older. Cynthia was trying to starve me out. Back at the ranch, I sank into Henry's old armchair, the weight of failure crushing me. Then she appeared, gloating in the doorway. You got the bank notice, she sneered. We'll take possession soon. Maybe find a nice apartment. I was empty, beaten. Then something snapped. I remembered the election I'd won weeks earlier, the campaign I'd kept separate from the ranch. My inauguration as Montana's governor was days away. I stood, my exhaustion burned away by cold fury. Cynthia stepped back, her smirk fading. She'd picked a fight with Luke Dawson, paramedic. She had no idea she was about to face Governor Luke Dawson. On September 1st, 2024, I stood on the Capitol steps in Helena, hand on a family Bible, swearing my oath. Iron and Sam watched from the crowd, proud. During the meet and greet, Cynthia pushed through, waving a final demand letter for the cameras. I took it, turned to a live microphone, and spoke. This letter represents a problem plaguing our state: corrupt HOAs harassing honest people with fake documents and fraudulent liens. Her face paled as I announced a task force to investigate HOA fraud, starting with Pine Valley. I turned to Sheriff Dan Holt. Sheriff, this woman has committed felonies, including forgery and fraud. Do your duty. The handcuffs clicked, and the crowd roared as Cynthia was led away, her clipboard hitting the ground. 3 months later, the task force exposed Pine Valley's fraud: fake stamps, forged notices, a slush fund. Cynthia resigned in disgrace. The HOA paid $1.3 million in restitution. My account was unfrozen, the lien voided. I won by checking facts, documenting everything, and uniting my community. The ranch is peaceful again. I fixed the barn, kept the scars as a reminder, and hung a new sign. Dawson Ranch, built 1869, still standing. At a barbecue, neighbors laughed, kids chased fireflies, and the cattle lowed under the stars. The legacy endures. Justice, it turns out, is the best inheritance. What would you do if someone tried to steal your family's legacy? Should HOAs have the power to bully homeowners? Was my response too harsh, or did Cynthia get what she deserved? Drop your thoughts below, let's hear your take.